Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
And there was a time in this country, a long time ago, when reading wasn't just for and neither was writing. People wrote books and movies that had stories, so you cared whose ass it was and why it was farting. And I believe that time can come again.
Yo, it's Film Church Radio. The podcast that treats cinema like, it's today. I'm Branden.
I'm Lewis.
And we're here to talk and stuff, Each week, Lewis and I alternate picking a film. And today I picked a film. It's Idiocracy from 2006. Written and directed by Michael Judge, Luke Wilson, Mia Rudolph, and Dax Shepard. Welcome to the show, everybody. That was my best Justin Long impression. I hope I did it justice.
Justin.
Do what?
Hope you did it, Justin. Never mind. I'm just getting in the mindset of this film.
Yeah, exactly. So this film, I had seen it mostly, I don't know when. It was maybe the year it came out, 2006, maybe 2007 or something. Really late one night, pulling an all-nighter, trying to finish a slideshow. And so I didn't remember a ton about it. There was a few things that I remembered, but decided to give it a watch, see what Lewis's thoughts were. We're going to get into that in the episode. I enjoyed it. It's got some problematic things, but I think it still holds up. Did you like it?
I think the idea was good.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll get onto it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like maybe you didn't quite like it as much as me, so which will, make for a good episode. But like I said, we'll get into that here in a little bit. First, we'd like to say thank you to everybody who's been watching the show and listening to the podcast, sending their love. If you're new to the show and you're enjoying it, please sure to subscribe to whatever podcast service you're listening to us on. Send us a comment on all our social media channels, which is everything is at Film Church Radio. And yeah, let us know what you think of the show. We also have a YouTube channel where we have a couple of extra reviews, like we did a MCU thing and a Obi-Wan Kenobi reaction video that you guys can check out. We're going to do more of those in the future, so subscribe to us on YouTube. But before we get into Idiocracy, we like to talk about the films that we've been watching lately. We have quite a few, so we decided to split them up between this episode and next episode. And this episode, we're going to talk about everything from 2022 that we've seen recently, including in theaters and on Netflix and things like that. So a few of them, both of us have seen, especially like the ones in the theater. I finally saw Top Gun. We've both seen Elvis. We've both seen Bullet Train. We've both seen Nope. So we're going to talk about a few of those. But tell me what else you've been watching before we get into the mutual viewings.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing about having a kid is that you can't go to the cinema as often. So I know that there's been a lot out recently that I've wanted to see. And it kind of coincided. I took a week off from work. Had some vacation time to use, so I used it. My dad was in town, and I went to the cinema 4 days out of 5.
Nice.
So, yeah, dude, made the most of it. I was just like, I need to kind of tick all these off. Elvis was still playing, and I wanted to see Nope, so we kind of we got there. But before we went to the cinema, we watched The Gray Man, the Netflix biggest budget ever release. James Bond, Mission Impossible style. With Ryan Gosling, who I feel like has been away from the screen for years and years. I know he did that because he had kids and stuff, I think, and then he took a step back. So it's really good to see him back.
Yeah.
Directed by the Russos, who did obviously the Avengers films. And it's fine. You know, some of the set pieces work really well, and it's like big and loud, and things get blown up, and none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you kind of don't expect it to make sense and go in just for a fun film, it's fine, you know.
Do you think it would have worked better if it had been in cinemas?
That's tough. I don't think there's enough there for it to be. I mean, there seemed to be like a lot of characters in it, but none of them really had any kind of like depth.
Yeah.
You know, everyone was super one-dimensional. I would have liked to see it on the big screen because some of the action set pieces are really fun and, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. It's like when you're watching big action stuff.
Yeah.
Like, is it that good at home? You know?
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because that's like Netflix model. I think it got like a very limited cinema release.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind that, you know, these actors that are bankable are just going straight to Netflix.
Yeah, especially, and the Russos too. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I guess, you know, I guess it's all about money, right? Because it's, you know, Netflix maybe gave them more money than another studio would, but maybe that's because another studio was like, you need something better if you're going to put it in theaters.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, honestly, you know, they're setting it up for like a sequel and maybe a series. I mean, it was announced like 2 weeks later that there's a sequel and a spin-off that's already in the works.
Man, that's just like...
I mean, you can just tell that that's why Netflix did it. It was like, we're going to make this into a sit. And it's like, learn from DC. That does not work. Okay?
Yeah.
If you just like push these things through, it's not going to go well.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just like where things are going. I mean, that's I guess what, not necessarily where things are going, because it's where things are trying to go. It's what's selling. It's like the franchisable IP or whatever. But yeah, it's like, you know, the reason Marvel is the king at it and everybody's copying them, the reason that they did it so well is because they went in it from the mindset of like, let's make one really good movie and then let's make another really good movie. And they just focused on one movie at a time. Now it's getting a little crazy, and I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to sustain it. But I mean, that's how they built up that whole franchise, you know?
Yeah, and I think that there's you know, everyone jumps to Marvel, but we need to talk about Mission Impossible as well. They are taking their time. Yeah. You know, they know that people love these films, but they're making really well, like, written, well acted films that are for adults. You know, it's not like, you know, there was some like violence and stuff in it, but it is, you know, the kind of thing that me as a 13-year-old would have been like, yeah. You know, whereas Mission Impossible, there's like so many layers to it. It's a bit more like the story matters, you know. Yeah. Whereas this, I could not remember anything from this film.
Well, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, but it's there. It's on Netflix, so you know it's free if you have Netflix. And then I saw Nope. So this was the first of my cinema trips. So we went to see Nope, and I know that you've seen it, and you didn't really say anything about it until I had seen it.
Yeah, I was gonna wait. I didn't want to spoil anything. So spoilers if you haven't seen Nope. We're gonna talk about it for a second here.
Yeah.
You know, so skip ahead. Whatever you need to do. Go watch it, then listen. But we might get into spoilers here. Yeah.
I mean, my first instinct when walking out, like my first reaction to it was Jordan Peele has kind of created another film where repeat viewings are necessary. Like there's so much in there that I'm like, what is that about? Yeah. You know, and not in like a bad way, not in like, this does not make sense. More like, I know there's something there to like take from it, but I don't, like, this first time it must have passed me by. Yeah. You know, because there's a lot of stuff in there that is surface level, but there's a lot, I think, that's beneath the surface that takes a few times to watch to kind of just really get it.
Yeah, for sure.
And my first reaction, I mean, I have kind of cooled a little bit, but not a lot. But I did think that it was maybe his best when I came out of the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm like, I think that was just in the moment. I think it's really good, but I think Get Out is still like a 5-star masterpiece.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I loved it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was really, really interesting. You know, something I'd not really seen before. It kind of took a lot of genres and played with it and kind of gave us something different.
Yeah.
You know, it's good. It's a good film.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was 5 out of 5. You know, there are still like things there that, you know, you can go deeper with. That I think I'm going to catch more again on the rewatch, but it did very much feel, I mean, it feels like something I haven't seen in a long time, and it's the kind of movie that I used to just love, and it's the kind of movie that people just would always try to copy and make, but would never, it was only like once every decade or 2 decades that someone would actually make a good one, and this feels like that. And I mean, you know, for example, like Jaws, or like you know, M. Night Shyamalan, what he was doing in the early days. You know, I feel like this feels like that. Very, really good characters, very mysterious throughout. You know, you're constant, like the movie is constantly one step ahead of you. You're not exactly sure where it's going, and then when you find out what it is, it's like really interesting and something you hadn't really thought about. And just the engagement, you know, like of the film, like it just grabs you and sucks you in, and it, you know, pulls you into this really fun story. Like that was what was great about it for me. It was like, it was just a really, really fun movie, marketed as like a horror film, but it's, you know, it's more of just like a suspense thriller.
Yeah, action thriller kind of thing.
Yeah, your summer kind of blockbuster thing, and
and
then with touches of things in there that me as a filmmaker just loves, like the fact that it's like shot on IMAX 65 millimeter film, and then you know, there's like the director of photography guy who's like obsessed with film, and you know, has his film camera with no batteries, and you know, there's like a scene where he's like editing on an old editing table and stuff, like all those things. So it's just like geeking out about, like, ooh, that's cool, you know. So yeah, I can't wait to go back and watch it. I definitely want to see it at least once more before it gets out of the theater, you know, hopefully a few more times.
I was saying, I just can't wait to kind of see it again. It probably will be when it comes to on demand now. But yeah, I mean, seeing it in the cinema was an experience.
Yeah.
So
everybody needs to go see it immediately.
Yeah. It'll bend your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And then after that, we saw Vengeance. So, I mean, BJ Novak, who was in The Office and wrote a lot of episodes for it, this is his, I believe, feature directorial debut. He wrote it and he stars in it. And it is like, I text you when I'd watched it, and I was like, I think you're going to love it, because it seems like it's right up your alley in terms of like location and the characters that are in it. And it's about a New York, like young adult, that sounds ridiculous, like early 30s kind of modern man, I guess. There's like multiple sexual partners, like trying to launch a podcast, you know, living the modern life. And then a girl that he used to hook up with dies, and he gets invited to her funeral in Texas, because the family think that the relationship was more than it was. So he ends up going, and then her brother pretty much says to him, like, I think she was murdered. And he's like, okay, this sounds like a podcast. So he starts like recording everything for this podcast. And it's like, it is like a dark comedy, but I thought it was really, really good. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, really tight. The depiction of Texas was incredibly funny. There's a great scene involving Whataburger, which,
sweet,
you know, we're from Texas, we know the love for Whataburger. So and I think it just got like a really small release, but I think it's a really solid start, you know.
Yeah, for him, for BJ
people should
Novak.
definitely go see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah, that sounds really good now that I know a little more about the plot and stuff.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, watching the trailers, but, I mean, I do like Ashton Kutcher, or Kutcher.
Yeah.
How do you say his last name? Is it Kutcher or Kutcher?
I say Kutcher, but
Kutcher.
Could be. Yeah.
Kutcher sounds dirty.
Rude. Yeah.
But I mean, I've always liked that guy. I mean, of course, that '70s show, and then Dude, Where's My Car, and the Butterfly Effect, and I liked him in the Steve Jobs movie. I thought he did. I thought he did well.
Yeah.
So
It reminded me a lot of Bernie, and I think that if this had been made like 10 years earlier, McConaughey probably would have played the Kutcher character.
Gotcha.
That's just kind of the vibes I was getting from it when I was watching it. But
Yeah. Cool.
And he mentions Linklater at one point, and I was like, okay, obviously there's some inspiration here from like Dazed and Confused and Bernie and stuff. So.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see it. Yeah, I'm gonna go check it out. Try to go see it on a cheap day matinee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try not to break the bank.
No. But I mean, I went, even though we went like first thing in the morning at like 10:30, but there was like 4 people in.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because, again, we've talked about it. I think it'll come to like streaming and it'll just get kind of lost. It'll probably come at the same time as maybe Bullet Train.
Yeah.
And like it'll just get kind of lost in the shuffle, which is a shame. Because I think it's a really good film.
Yeah, we'll see what he does next because, I mean, it could be a really interesting career for him coming up. I mean, did he not write some on The Office?
He did, yeah, and he wrote quite a lot, I think, and his kind of sense of humor is very, akin to mine. It's like, a little bit dark, but people just saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, and it's really good. But let's talk about some films that we've both seen.
Yeah.
Recently, starting with Bullet Train, the new Brad Pitt vehicle. Pardon the pun. This kind of surprised me in terms of him being involved in it.
Right, yeah.
It kind of came out of nowhere in terms of like, oh, this is a Brad Pitt film,
I have a theory on this, but continue.
Okay, cool. I think that the supporting cast is really good as well. I mean, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, it's good to see him in a role where he can actually do something with it. And yeah, just like, it was like, I didn't love it. There was a lot of stuff in there that was enjoyable. But it just kind of, it went the way of like Marvel films where it's just action was kind of, inserted instead of character development.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I know that's probably what it was going for, and I've read that it was supposed to be a more serious, like, martial arts style film, and then the actors kind of started hamming it up a little bit, and it went into this comedy route instead. And I think that's the problem, it's battling with those two films the whole time.
Yeah. But
I think you liked it more than me. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, okay, so I might have liked it even more if it hadn't have been for my theater experience. And
oh no,
I hate talking about this because I love movie theaters. I do not want them to die. I want them to stay around, and everyone should go to the theaters and keep cinemas alive. But we saw it on like a preview. It was like the Tuesday before it. It was coming out Friday.
Yeah.
And the person who bought our tickets accidentally bought them at the wrong theater. But we were there. It was like right at 7 when we got there, and the movie started at 7. So yeah, got the ticket switched out. And then by the time we walked into the theater, it was like 7:15, and the movie had already started. And I was like, shit, what have we missed? Like, how much of this have we missed? And it's like going. Like, the movie just goes. It's one of those kinds of movies. So it's like, it was hard to tell how much we had missed. And then it's assigned seating, but there were people sitting in our seats.
Of course.
So, the seats right in front of the seats we bought were open, and I was like, I mean, the movie's already started, 17 minutes past, surely no one's going to buy tickets for these seats. So we just sat, instead of like being like, hey, you're in our seats, and missing even more of the movie, we just sat down, and then like 5 or 10 minutes later, people show up and they're like, hey, you're in our seats. So we have to get up, and it's like we've already missed the beginning of the film, so I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. Now I'm like having to not pay attention to the movie, go behind us and be like, hey, you're in our seats, and the people get up and leave. We sit down, and then it like smells in the back of the theater, like piss, like someone peed in the back of the theater. And then I noticed that like there's like these little flickerings in the projector, and realize it's flies like flying up into the projector and glowing.
Oh God.
And probably because of the piss. So I was just like, it just did not start off great for the movie. No. And then the rest of the movie, I was like, okay, I got to try to figure out what's going on and enjoy this. And I did enjoy the movie and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just didn't start off great. Which
sucks.
Like I said, I hate to like dog on any theater, but like it just wasn't great. So and I, like I said, I don't know how much I miss. I'm wondering now if like, because it was a preview, if they just didn't have any trailers at all and we missed a full 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Was he already on the train?
Yeah, they were already on the train. It was like starting with the two British characters. Mm-hmm. When we walked in, the two British characters were just like, the twins that they call them or whatever. They were just like in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah. You probably missed about 15 minutes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I don't know any cinema. I mean, Alamo are pretty like on the dot.
Yeah, it wasn't Alamo.
No, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like Alamo.
It wasn't Alamo.
I think the one thing I've noticed about going to the cinema that isn't Alamo, because the whole time last week we went to Cinemark, and they did. I mean, Cinemark is really great, I think. Yeah. Especially the times we went, but we went in the morning for every film, and there was hardly anyone else there. But even the people that were in there were like loud. Yeah. Not like shouting, but you could hear them like whispering. Yeah. And I was like, man, I miss out. I just miss like silence. Yeah, or just I like to be immersed. I don't like anything to pull me out. And if you you said, if you start to smell something, it's like I can't concentrate on this,
Yeah, it's just like the Alamo, besides the fact that they, enforce like no talking during the movie, they just respect the movie experience. And they try to make it the best experience that they can for people, because they know that the people coming to their theater love movies and they love the cinema experience. So they try to give them that, down to like, making sure that the projection is right and all, the technicalities of everything and stuff. So yeah, it was just, it was just unfortunate. And that doesn't happen a lot, showing up late and there being pee in the back of a theater, for me anyway. I don't know about other people's experiences, but but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it pretty much, and it made a lot more sense to me when I realized after the film that the guy who made Deadpool 2, that directed Deadpool 2, made this. And so my theory, I actually found out more information a little while ago, but my theory when I watched it was like, I was thinking about Deadpool 2, and there's a lot of Deadpool 2 cast in this film, including Brad Pitt. Yeah. Who, has that one tiny little cameo. But it was like the opposite in this because, Deadpool himself.
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. Has like a tiny cameo. Yeah. He's in the film for like one shot. Yeah. So I don't know if that was like part of the joke.
I guess.
You know?
Like, I assume so.
So I felt like that had something to do with it. I mean, plus when you look at David Leitch's filmography, he seems like somebody he's had success, right? I mean, Deadpool 2,
Yeah.
he's produced John Wick, or did he direct John Wick? I don't know. On IMDb,
I think he originally started directing it, and then someone took over.
Okay, so and then Atomic Blonde, which had some success. Yeah, so it's like he seems like a pretty relevant, successful action director. So I could see how he could get, and Brad Pitt's somebody who doesn't want to just do the same movie every time, right?
Yeah.
But then I started listening to a podcast, I think it's Real Blend or something like that. And I just listened to the beginning of the episode because it was about Bullet Train, and David Leitch was apparently Brad Pitt's stunt double on Fight Club. So they already had this relationship and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, it's hard for me to really say. I wasn't really sure what I thought about it because, like I said, it just started it off as a terrible experience, and then I wasn't there. I just felt like I had missed so much context. But I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, it was a very well made. The action was pretty good. It was a little over the top, but it was like I went into it expecting that, so I wasn't like, I wasn't complaining necessarily. I do feel like a little bit over this style. Like,
I was going to talk about the style. I think that it just makes me appreciate Tarantino so much more.
Yeah, for sure.
And just the uniqueness of what he does with this kind of stuff. Because, I mean, the names coming up on the screen and stuff, I'm like, nobody can do it as well.
Yeah.
As him,
Yeah. Well, and also it's just, I was thinking about this because I like, I'm not against violence in films, but like it's kind of needs to mean something or else it just starts to get boring. Like, been watching The Boys and I just finished season 2 and I feel like I'm just now kind of getting into the story, but like all the over the top violence in it, I mean, some of it's funny. Like, I get why they're doing it, and it's also fun as filmmakers to like do practical effects like that. But in The Boys, it's not always practical. But it just feels so over the top that I'm just like, I'm just
get ready for the first episode of season 3.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, I get that it's like, I just feel maybe I'm just getting older, and I'm just like,
maybe.
If I was a teenager watching The Boys, I would be like, this is so good. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just I'm not really into it yet. But it was also kind of like that for me with like Game of Thrones. It's like by the time you get to the end of season 2, you really start getting into it. So just maybe takes time.
I think that, I mean, I said it on the podcast quite a few weeks ago when we were watching season 3 that the first episode nearly made me like not continue watching it of season 3.
Yeah.
But I think I am more invested in the characters.
Yeah.
And it I really enjoyed season 3. I thought it was really good. So if the first episode makes you not want to watch the second, just carry on.
Okay.
That's my top tip.
Sounds good.
And then we both went to see Elvis, which I'm glad that we both did because it's like the last run in the cinema. The day I went to see it was the day it was announced it was coming to on demand.
Oh, okay,
so I knew that the theatrical run was like at the end. You know? But it's a film you need to see on the big screen.
Yeah, definitely.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a massive fan of Baz Luhrmann normally. I'm not. I never kind of seek out his films to watch, but I think that it matched the subject matter really well. Yeah. I didn't really know anything about Elvis, and I was just gripped. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it a lot. I see you gave it 4 out of 5, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5. I mean, I even thinking about the film after I went to see it, I was like, man, that was really, really good. I mean, Austin Butler, like all the acting is amazing. Austin Butler, Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks kind of reminded me a little bit of Well, like he's such a good actor, and it just shows the difference between like Tom Hanks doing something like that and Jared Leto doing something like that for House of Gucci or whatever. Because there wasn't like, Tom Hanks has a lot of scenes in this movie and he narrates it and stuff, but I was never like, oh, here's Tom Hanks again doing this weird thing again. He never like takes over the scene. You know what I mean? And he never distracts from the story. Whereas like Jared Leto and House of Gucci is just like, stop. Like, you're doing it's going too far, and you're eating away the scenery and the good stuff. And then same with like Austin Butler is like he was so good in the role, and I was never like, oh, this is Austin Butler. I was like, this is Elvis.
Because I feel like Elvis is the most imitated person ever.
Yeah, probably.
I didn't really listen to Elvis, and I can, and I know what the imitation sounds like.
Yeah.
And I think that it would have been really hard to not do a parody.
Yeah,
but instead it is a performance. He embodies the character. It's not like a skit, which is really commendable.
Yeah. I think it probably will end up being like a 5 out of 5 for me eventually, but I think the way the film starts is the only negative for me. It just started so rapidly.
It's very Lerman,
and I was
like
just
the spinning roulette wheel and the signs and the
it was just so much like getting thrown at you that I was like, I guess I haven't seen enough Lerman films to be like, oh, that's his style, because to me it just felt like maybe the studio or something saying, we got to get their attention right away. And it's just like, no, you don't. Just slow down. Like, you're throwing too much at me at once. But I mean, I was totally gripped by the film, as it got going and stuff.
And I think my only slight problem with it was there was a few scenes where they used like modern music. In like that, and I'm like, if we're telling the story of Elvis and kind of his influences, the catalogue of music is so ripe and like rich that I just don't understand why we'd have to pick something that's like from now. Do you know what I mean? It kind of just felt a bit, there was 20 songs I probably would have preferred hearing instead of the ones they chose. But again, I mean, that's what Moulin Rouge, he did that. He updated songs and had characters kind of sing them and stuff. So it's just his style, I guess. But I think that's one of the reasons why it wasn't a 5. And it's very small things. It's something that wouldn't really bother me normally. But when a film is that gripping, those things stand out as like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I didn't mind the modern music so much. But it did bother me a little bit, or not really bother. It was just kind of threw me off at the end. In the credits, like Eminem is like singing in part of the credits, and I was like, "What? Why?"
I know.
I was like, "Is this because he was like the other, famous white musician to culturally appropriate?" Or
I mean,
like,
I mean, it's a good shout. Maybe I know not that he is the same in any way, but like Jack White's on the soundtrack as well, and I love Jack White. But I was still like, let's hear some, Motown
other influences.
Or, Elvis or something like that instead. But again, like you said, it's just a small, like, minor detail. The film itself, I thought was bloody brilliant. So
same.
Glad I saw it.
So I did finally see Top Gun Maverick.
Did you love it?
I did. Yeah, it was 5 out of 5 for me. Like, I had a couple of things, but like, it was such a great like cinematic experience. And the next couple of days, like, I could tell like my neck was just sore from like being so tense in the film.
It's like, crazy.
It was crazy. But I loved it.
That's awesome. That's one that Chelsea's ordered on like 4K, pretty much.
Oh,
she was just like, we just wanted to see it again. Yeah, it's just a blast. It's so much fun
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
compared to the original.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, speaking of which, it was amazing how there was so many, like, it still felt the same in a lot of ways as far as the tone of the film, the way it looked, and then there's like certain scenes that they like directly take out of the first one but do it in an updated way. I mean, like the volleyball scene in the first one, and they do like a football scene on the beach in this one, and it's like, wow, they actually like, you know, if you didn't know any better, or even if you had seen the first one a million times, I don't think you would be like, oh, this is just a copy, you know?
Yeah. No, I completely get it. I think that it's the perfect path between like homage, like talking about what came before and updating it.
Yeah.
You know, not being completely, I don't know, like not giving into like what they think fans would want to see. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I had literally no desire to see this film.
Yeah.
And then the word of mouth, I was like, okay, if people are giving it 5 stars and talking about how great it is, I want to go and check it out.
Yeah.
You know, and I would watch this again and again. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it makes me wonder what oh god, I forgot her name. Director of Wonder Woman.
Patty Jenkins.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what Patty Jenkins is going to do with her Rogue Squadron movie. Like, how's she going to top Top Gun? Or maybe,
I'd be sitting there in the
she's
cinema
gonna do
like
something else.
white, just like, oh god,
Yeah,
this has got to be good, you know.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm still excited though.
yeah, me too.
Well, we just spent almost 40 minutes talking about movies and haven't even got to the main film. We're such idiots. Speaking of idiots, we're here to talk about Idiocracy today, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, like I said at the beginning of the show, I enjoyed it pretty well. I had quite a few laugh out loud moments. It is, I don't know. There's a lot there to analyze. You know, there's a lot that I feel is, it almost feels like, an older generation, like the baby boomers or something, being like, kids these days, you know, because I mean, every society I feel like has people that, I don't know. I don't want to talk negatively about people necessarily, or be like people that aren't intelligent or just so stupid, you know. It's not always everyone's personal fault that they were uneducated or whatever it is, you know, whatever their circumstances might be. But it feels a little more like, I don't know, some parts of it feel like, okay, this was ahead of its time. You know, all of the stuff that, a lot of the stuff they're making fun of, you can already see, you know, less than 2 decades later. And this is supposed to be 500 years later. I don't want to say too much right off the bat, but I mean, what was your take on the film? Do you think it aged well, or do you think, I don't know. What were your thoughts?
I think it's a very, I think it's a film of its time. I think it's hard, you know, we fall into this pitfall a lot, especially with like comedies from the 80s. You know, you look at like Ghostbusters and other films that haven't aged particularly well, and it's hard to separate our modern day sensibilities from film. I mean, this, you know, we're looking at it, it's nearly 20 years old, you know.
Yeah.
We're approaching that time where it is an old film, you know.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of see it from that time. I know that if I had seen this when I'd been like 12, 13, I probably would have loved it.
Yeah.
But I feel like my sensibility has changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, you know.
So like coming away from the film, like when the film ended, were you like, that was terrible? Or were you like, that was...
I don't think I'd go
fun.
as far to say it was terrible. I think
Yeah.
my biggest frustration was that it was like a dive off a high board. You know, it like when the premise is set up, you're like, okay, this is really interesting. And instead of like a beautiful dive, it just kind of turned into a belly flop for me. It was a bit like none of the things that I thought it was going to deliver on had any substance to it. And it just kind of reverted into just like a lazy depiction of stupidity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Well, what did you expect, I guess? Or
Yeah, I think I expected it to be a little bit more smart in the depiction of the future and like, you know, stupidity, I guess. Which is, I know that's a bit weird to say, but you know, the stupid characters, the dumb characters, like they're cartoon dumb. You know, it's not like they get things wrong. You know, they're watering plants with like what looks like Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
You know, it's like ludicrously stupid.
Yeah.
And I know that was kind of like the point is like we're worried that this is where society's going to end up, but I thought that it could have been handled or could have been portrayed a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, it's definitely, it's not, you know, it might be more of a cautionary tale or something, I guess, you know. It's, you know, I didn't mean to like rag on the film right when we started.
No.
I think I put you on the spot a little bit, but I mean, there are a lot of things that I enjoyed about the film, and I get the points that you're making. Like one of the things I was thinking about is the way that language is used in this film. Yeah, I don't know. Like the language seemed a little bit ridiculous. I mean, this was I guess 2005 when they made it, right? It came out in 2006. Yeah. You know, and there's 3 words that are used frequently in this film that are not I don't know if politically correct is the right word to use. They're just very taboo now.
Yeah.
In a good way. It's like we don't want to be using these 3 words. I feel like watching this film, like, well, for one thing, you couldn't make this film now, I don't think.
No.
And it have any kind of success. It didn't have any success really when it came out. It kind of became a cult. Kind of got a cult following when the DVDs and stuff came out, but specifically the use of these 3 words, and if you've seen the film, you know what 3 words I'm talking about. You know, I feel like it's taken America some time to get used to, we shouldn't use these words.
Yeah.
You know, like the N word, the F word, and the R word. You know, like those words have been in a lot of films, especially around that time, and then bleeding over into like the I don't even know what to call the next decade. What do we call the 2010s? The beginning of the 2010s.
Yeah. The teens.
the tweenies.
Yeah.
Like bleeding over into the beginning of that decade. You know, some films are still using the words. Like I think about Tarantino using the N word so much in all of his films, and then, you know, in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I mean, is there an N word in the movie? I have to go back and watch it. I don't think there is, and that might be the first Tarantino film that doesn't have the N word. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is interesting because like that's weirdly something he's known for, right? So my point is, like, the film kind of, to me, shows, here's what society could end up being like if we don't reflect on the importance of our language. Yeah. And like words that we should and shouldn't use and things like that. Because I don't want to see a society like this. You know what I mean? So in
And-
that point is a cautionary tale for me, and makes me realize, oh, here is something that we have made progress on. We're not going in that direction of using these words all the time, unless, you know,
Yeah.
the few people in America that do still think it's okay to use these words, you know, take over
Yeah.
the country, which, you know, which I guess could be a possibility.
Yeah.
But you know, like, I don't know. I think about that scene. Have you seen Ozark?
I haven't. No.
There's a really good. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's a really good scene where Jason Bateman, he's in kind of this, you know, country town or whatever, and he is talking with someone in a bar, and they use the R word, and he goes on this whole speech about how the guy shouldn't be using the R word. It's done really well. I mean, it sounds kind of cheesy the way I'm describing it, but it's like done really well to make you think like, yeah, let's not use that word, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's my biggest problem with this is I never knew if they were using those words to pinpoint the stupidity of these characters or whether it was just to get a cheap laugh.
Yeah.
You know, because all it would have taken is Luke Wilson's character to be like, hey, that's not even cool in my time.
Yeah.
But, you know,
but see, it was 2005, so it kind of was.
Exactly. And I think that's the problem that I had. I was like, I think it's in here to kind of make me laugh instead of being like, you know, look at these characters and how they haven't progressed.
Yeah.
You know?
But if you like, I also started thinking, well, for one thing, the Luke Wilson character is supposed to be very average from that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's not like, he's not an idiot. He's not a genius. You know what I mean? He's just kind of like, they say he's like right in the middle or whatever, you know, to the point where later on in the film, you can see that he's oblivious about the Maya Rudolph character being a prostitute. You know, it's like kind of a joke where he's like too dumb to get it or whatever. But I was thinking about like, okay, 500 years ago from today, if someone from that time showed up and was speaking like super old proper English, we would be like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, it wouldn't, you know, to us, it would be almost like the way they're portraying it in the movie, not to the point where, you know, we would think that they were, you know, what they say in the movie, but you know, it would be kind of off-putting. It would be like, is this a joke? You know, what are you doing right now? Which I think is, you know, the film doesn't really necessarily give you that perspective unless you're kind of thinking about it, I guess. So yeah, it's hard to tell if this movie was deeply thought about or if, you know, they were just trying to think of funny stuff to do.
Yeah, I think that it probably kind of grew from a nugget of like an idea, you know, this kind of like, oh, we're doomed if these people are going to take over. Because I know that when I was, you know, hiring people and interviewing and stuff, there was a lot of times that I worried about the future generation. Just for the people that either, you know, you would interview and just be like nobody has any people skills. Yeah. You know, that was my experience then. And obviously, you know, there were people that did have people skills and stuff. But you do worry about the future. And I think this is probably where it's come from. But I just wish that there would have been a few more like script sessions and just kind of flesh these ideas out a little bit more and kind of, not gone for the easy option all the time. Which I felt that, you know, happened a lot. There was a lot of points where it could get really satirical and kind of comment on today's society, and they just kind of like blow past it. Which was a shame. You know?
I mean, I don't, you know, I've read a few things about the production of this film. Not a ton. I mean, there's stuff out there that people can find if they want to dive deeper into it. But it sounds like it did have like a troubling production and stuff, and they cut the budget a lot, and then the Fox like tried to bury it, kind of like they didn't really do a wide release. They tried to just like not promote it at all because they were using they use real corporations in the film. I mean, they talk about Starbucks, they talk about Costco. Yeah. And, the Brando is clearly like Gatorade. And all these kind of things like Fuddruckers, which is one of the greatest jokes in there, where you see the title just like keep changing until it just gets to butt fuckers. But yeah, like corporations were like, like these are, Fox, obviously has been bought by Disney now, but at the time they had all these different entertainment outlets and stuff, and these companies would be advertisers with Fox, right? So they had problems with the film for obvious reasons, which to me the corporation part of the film is very well done. I feel like in the cautionary sense, I guess, is like corporations become so big that they kind of take over every aspect of society. It's kind of like the worst version of capitalism, that we're kind of already entering into. It's like it reminds me of like the Bo Burnham bit in his Inside Special, where he's talking about brand awareness and brands needing to pick a side and be a part of social change and stuff, which it's like just so that they to create more brand awareness or whatever. And it's like if you actually care about society and care about real issues, you'll go do shit yourself. It's not about a brand, and Brando like takes over buys basically all these different forms of government to where they put it in the water fountains. It's like taking over everything. Was there any laugh out loud moments that you had watching the film? Like, what were your...
Honestly, it was more of like the really silly stuff that kind of made me laugh. I mean, I really liked the joke about when he ends up back in prison, and she's like, "Why aren't you trying to escape?" And he's like, "Oh no, they've come up with a way to keep me here." And it's like he's chained to a giant rock. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. But I think it was hard to like really kind of like lose myself in it, I guess, and like laugh at it. And I don't know if it's because of my expectations. I think of like the early 2000s and like futuristic looks, and I cannot not think of Futurama, which is such a wonderful like take on the future. It mixes everything really well, and it just didn't kind of live up to that. Not that it should do, but I mean, Futurama had kind of started and ended like its original run by the time that this came out. And knowing that Mike Judge was, King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead and stuff, he must have been aware of other animated shows around that same time. Yeah. And it just didn't, I don't know, I didn't see any of the kind of creativity, I guess. Even the cityscapes are just, I don't know whether they were trying to go for like a Blade Runner style future where it's all kind of built up and like dark and dirty and, I know it can't all be big and flashy, but I'm just not sure what the vision was. Yeah. And again, this all sounds like you asked me if there was any points that I laughed out loud, and I ended with saying, hey, this isn't something I liked, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody likes what they like, dude. It's it is what it is. But like, I yeah, I did laugh out loud quite a bit in this film. Like Dax Shepard, I felt was really well, like did a really good job. Like there's so many things he did that just made me bust out laughing. The whole like, when you first see him and he's just sitting on the couch and there's like all these like this video. He's got a huge TV, with all these different streams of video coming through, and he's watching this show called Ow My Balls.
Yeah.
And this is like when did YouTube come around? Because this is like 2005. So this was like, YouTube had to be in its infancy.
Yeah.
So just to have the foresight to see like, okay, this is kind of where things are going. I feel like that is pretty accurate. Like people just, they'd rather get the quick laugh than sit down and watch something like a longer film or, just any long form of entertainment or whatever. It's like all the quick laughs, the prank videos, the things like that. There are no cell phones in the movie, which is like kind of crazy.
Yeah.
they missed the mark there. But the entertainment YouTube thing, I felt it was pretty accurate. And then he like gets up off the couch. He gets up off his big chair and the toilet is on it.
Yeah.
And just his whole like character, I thought was hilarious. Like there's a scene where he's, where the Luke Wilson character comes back to his place to try to get his help or whatever. And he's like watching a masturbation network or whatever. And the video he's watching is like a woman's feet, like cutting steak. And then the guy, when Luke Wilson is like knocking on the door, he's like, "Go away, baiting."
Yeah.
Which just there's just things like that, like that just I thought were hilarious. Like, it's not accurate probably to the way the future is going to look, but it's almost just like a cautionary, like nightmarish tale, of how bleak the future could look. And Justin Long, pops up. Yeah, like his part was so funny to me. Just and again, like the way that he's using these words and stuff, I'm like, it's not using them in an endearing manner in any way. You know what I mean? It's kind of being like, look how stupid people look when they talk like this, and there are people who talk like that. You know what I mean? And I mean specifically in the words that he's using, not necessarily in the way that he's speaking. I love Justin Long so much. He's great.
Yeah. I have a question for you in relation to it. So I know I've never really seen King of the Hill. I know you said recently that you have been watching it. Do you think that kind of set you up for this in terms of the comedy style and like, are they
probably similar? Yeah.
Probably.
Because
I've never seen Beavis and Butthead either. I know that was like Mike Judge's big breakthrough.
Yeah.
Was that. So I don't know whether it's just not my type of comedy. I don't know.
Well, I think also you and I like different types of comedy. I don't necessarily know what that's rooted in. You like The Simpsons and Futurama and stuff, and that's like silly comedy and things, like that or whatever. But I do like terrible movies sometimes. You know what I mean? It's more about the acting for me, I think, a lot of times, and just ridiculous, silly jokes that sometimes are like, it's funny because it's not funny.
Yeah.
It's like, it's funny that someone thought that was funny, and so it's like just makes you laugh.
Yeah.
But specifically, like there's a movie called Movie 43 that is just one of the most terrible films you could ever see, but to me it's just hilarious.
Okay.
And part of the reason is because there's so many A-list actors in the movie that are so relevant today that when you watch this movie, it's just like weird to see them in something so terrible, and that's why it's funny to me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen it. I know that it was just panned. Like, it was, the worst movie ever made.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's and it's just like, yeah, I just think like stuff like that is fun. I don't know yet, like I said, I don't know what it's rooted in necessarily, but I also, I mean, before watching this film, like I said, I had seen it a long time ago when it first came out, but I mean, I was in my teens and like it was super late and I was pulling an all-nighter and I barely remembered it. So there was just a few things I remembered. But I was looking on Letterboxd when we were prepping for the show and read this review, like the top review on Letterboxd for this film. I'd read part of it before I even watched it. Yeah. Which kind of prepared me for it a little bit, but also kind of let me try to not be so critical of it, I guess, and just try to enjoy it a little bit. But yeah, the top review on Letterboxd is a guy named Ryan Green, if you want to go check it out. And he points out a lot of the problems with the film. Where did I put it? So, one of the first thing, I mean, it's a pretty long review, so I'm not going to like read the whole thing, but one of the first things that he points out is that it says the film perpetuates the idea that idiocy, as defined by the film, is hereditary, and the idea that natural selection must be permitted to function correctly if society is to endure, like pointing out, very problematic ideas. Yeah, I mean, that was like the same idea with like Nazism and stuff like that, I think. And but like I get that point, like that it makes sense where you could see that idea might be in the film, but also to me it's I don't necessarily think that's what the film was trying to do. I think it was more just like, idiocy wasn't necessarily hereditary. It was more that the people having kids were uneducated. Yeah. And the more... It's like when lower class society can't afford education, you end up with a society that's uneducated.
Well, that's the point I thought they were going to make. When it kind of started off with the two couples, kind of one of them deciding to wait because of the economy and stuff, and the other people that are just like, oh, we're gonna have another one, but it doesn't really, it kind of, and then it descends into, impotence is really funny, and it's like, well, it's not, so. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was saying. There was a lot of like things in here that could have grown into something really interesting. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think they had chance to.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like I feel that they could have made a better point, like you said. Like like how important education is, how important it is to put money into our education system and. Educating our children. I mean, there's people today that are very against public schools. Yeah. There's radical people that want to bring down our entire education system and think that all children should be taught by their parents in their homes, which I don't have a problem necessarily with. I mean, I grew up homeschooled. And I think I turned out fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with home education, but, there is a problem like when you try to perpetuate the idea that our public education system can never work. And then you have a bunch of people trying to educate their kids who aren't educated themselves.
And I think that just the time frame of it. I mean, if you really think about it, 500 years is like what, 6-7 generations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would we have really got to this point in like 7 generations if we're being like nice,
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you can pick the film apart, like crazy, but like the film doesn't even make sense in the first place. Like if you're trying to do that, because it's like you wouldn't have any kind of functional part of society. Like there's like for instance, the plants even being there and being brown. Like you wouldn't even have like all the crops would be dead. You know, you wouldn't have any seed there to be able to grow once you change back to water or whatever. Like it doesn't completely make sense. You wouldn't. I mean, there's when Luke Wilson is in the room with Justin Long, and he is like looking outside, and there's like the streets are all broken, the buildings are like tied together, and there's like a car driving off the freeway like into the ground, and it's like it's supposed to be silly, what I mean? It's not realistic in any way. It's like if we did have a quote unquote dumbing down of society, it wouldn't exactly look like this. I think it was supposed to be just like silly fun. I don't know another way to put it, but I mean, it's like at the same time, if you're doing like a political satire or something like that, like what you say is important, and this is kind of a cult film. Like a lot of people love this film,
I mean, if you're gonna make these points, some thought's got to go into it from my point of view. Yeah. I mean, did any of the actors stand out to you? Did you how do you feel about Luke Wilson? What are your thoughts on Luke Wilson? I don't think I've seen enough of Luke Wilson to kind of have an opinion. I know him from, he's shown up in a few sitcoms and played bit parts, and I don't dislike him. Like, he seems fine, I think. Missed his calling as like maybe a leading man. I don't know where his career kind of went, but I was really, really pleased to see Maya Rudolph, and I was kind of surprised to see her in it, seeing as it's nearly 20 years old, and in my eyes, she's kind of risen to prominence in the last maybe 10 years. Yeah. So that was really great to see her. And kind of see her have, more than a few lines of dialogue. But yeah, it is just a who's who of, I don't know, like comedians that we know, Yeah. The people kept showing up that I was like, oh, I know that person, so. Yeah. All kind of, supporting players, I think. I don't think there was any kind of standout performance in terms of like, wow, they stole the show, For me, anyway. I know that other people probably. I mean,
I love Justin Long. Like, he steals the show. And like I thought Dax Shepard was really good and made me be like, I know I've seen him and stuff, but what and why is he not around anymore and things like that. And Luke Wilson, he's good. He's really great in this part. He's not doing a lot. It doesn't seem like he's been around much the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really have much to do in it. To say he's the leading man, he just kind of like there's no big like scenes for him really. It's just kind of looking like surprised a lot. Yeah. So.
Well, I just realized what time it is, so we probably should try to wrap up. Is there anything else that you want to say about the film?
I don't feel like I've said a lot, but I knew I wasn't going to say a lot coming in.
Yeah.
I don't think. My main points are that I think the ideas could have been fleshed out a little bit more to make it more interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I think again that could just be the fact that it's of a time that feels alien to us already.
Yeah.
Maybe if I'd seen it 10, 15 years ago, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But unfortunately, I didn't love it.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's okay. You're not going to love every film you watch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So.
Do you think you'll revisit this film ever?
Unless something, if my judge comes out and does like a really great film, and I'm like, oh, I might go back. Or I don't know. Luke Wilson has kind of a resurgence. Maybe,
Yeah,
but probably not our choice.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and guess what each of us rated the film on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say you rated this film 2.
Okay, I'm gonna say that you rated it 3.5.
Okay. You're close. It was.
So
I gave it
you.
a 4.
I gave it a 1.5.
Oh wow! So I was like a little bit more, and you're a little bit less.
Yeah.
Wow, that is maybe the biggest gap that we've
Difference.
had.
Yeah, I would say so.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I thought this film was really funny, and I didn't take it too seriously. Wasn't reading into it.
I need to find something in my head where I can just watch a film. I think it's, I don't know if you had this problem when you were studying film as well, but like it kind of builds you up to look at films very analytically and kind of break it apart a little bit. And it's been something that ever since I finished, I struggle to kind of break out of and just be able to sit down and watch a film.
I think my background probably has a lot to do with it. Being homeschooled my whole life and then going to college for just a tiny little bit, but I didn't study film, and then I didn't really do film school until my late 20s.
Yeah.
And so, being able to analyze and study film in that way came later in life, which I can do, but I also like my natural kind of space is just to be like, sit back and enjoy this kind of attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I need to find a way to do that, I think, in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, you just disassociate.
It's tough.
And
Yeah.
just kidding.
Don't care about it.
Yeah. But yeah, it can be tough, for sure. So do you know what we're watching next week?
I do. So I've really struggled. I know that we've talked about choosing like films that we've both seen before and stuff like that. But because of my interests of late, what I've decided to do is go to a film that I looked on Letterboxd and that you really liked and I was a bit cold on, just to see if a second viewing would change it for me or change it for you. And with like everything that's been like that I've been watching recently, I have chosen Rebecca, the Alfred Hitchcock film.
Oh, nice.
From I think 1940.
Yeah.
I can remember like I watched it a few years ago and I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And then I saw that you gave it a really good review, so I wanted to kind of watch it again, and I thought that we could, watch it together and talk about it.
Sweet. That sounds fun. Yeah, I do remember liking it. I think I watched it while I was taking my Alfred Hitchcock course, so I'll have to look through my notes and find. I can't remember much about what I studied on the film. I'll have to look at it again. But yeah, that'll be fun. Sweet. Our first Hitchcock film on the show, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I, trying to mix it up a little bit instead of choosing something that either we both haven't seen or one of us hasn't seen. a film that we've both seen that we want to revisit. So
Yeah, sweet. Well, you know what? That is the end, and you're at the end now, and like you can find us at Film Church Radio, and you can follow us in separate if you want on Letterboxd at Silman Scope and Walker Lewis 3007. You can see what we do on there, what we watch, why, and when. Also, all of episodes are in the line, and they're on it. And you can hear what we think on there. So, let us know if you like things, and if you don't, and come back. But man, I could really go for a Starbucks,
Yeah, well, I really don't think we have time for a hand job, Brandon.
Damn. Oh, Starbucks.
Yeah. How it's changed since we were there.
Well, folks, hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to say your Film Church prayers, and we'll see you next week.
Amen.
Amen.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.